Champions Cup final, folks, and it's La Rochelle who get it done for another year. 1-pointer, unbelievable comeback. Very, very fitting of a final. We'll go through some key events and stats, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. I'm going to try and keep my voice down because it's like 5:55 in the morning. My children are sleeping, and I'd like to keep it that way. But geez, I don't know if I'll be able to go back to sleep because that was unbelievable. Unbelievable. I crawled out of bed. Stupid o'clock over here in New Zealand, and before I could even boil the jug to get the coffee on, Dan Sheehan had gone over for a try. Unbelievable start. I mean, atmosphere was incredible. Home Leinster crowd and the away fans as well. Absolutely kind of riveting stuff. Any of you guys have been to the game, I'm sure would have had kind of tingles or hair standing up on the back of your neck with the way that crowd was going. It was like unbelievable. We had a couple of times in this game where I don't think the referee was able to be heard. It was just that loud. But what a start from Leinster. Unbelievable. From the kickoff, Doolan's clearance kick is not the best. Like, it's all right, but it gives Leinster decent field position early, and boy, did they make that count. Kind of tricky line-up move where Conan doesn't jump, but he's able to take the ball in the middle of the line-out, get himself into some space, totally untouched, as the La Rochelle guys had marked up for the jumpers, which the ball didn't end up going to, and then they make use of the weapon that is Dan Sheehan with his gas. Conan flicks the ball to him, and he goes over pretty much untouched. So 7-0 within a minute, and the crowd is absolutely loving that in Dublin. And then a couple of minutes later, man, James Lowe with that big boot of his back after a long injury layoff, 50-22. Leads to a 5-metre line-out. Admittedly, the line-out's a wee bit messy, but there's a La Rochelle knock-on in there. But that leads to a scrum, some phases. Quick phases is the kind of key point. It's Leinster's game. And then they're able to get the ball out wide to Jimmy O'Brien on the right wing, who goes over for a pretty sweet try as well. Unconverted, the ball does hit the posts. Looking at the scoreline, they would have liked just one of those conversions from the touchline from Ross Byrne, but not to be. But not to know at the time that 12-0, was going to be kind of a crucial factor. But anyway, you can look back at loads of things in terms of going back through the fine details of the match to see where the match was lost. But yeah, 12-0. Still, they would have liked to get the conversion. La Rochelle did finally get some ball because they'd been just living on defence for the start of the game. They go 13 phases, but I mean, big tackle, Dan Sheehan, Josh van der Fleer winning a penalty at the breakdown. Then Jamison Gibson Park, the kind of quick thinking to take a wee tap, and then Kerballo, fellow Kiwi, tackles him within the 10 metres, didn't retreat back 10, so he gets carded. So, man, it is absolutely all Leinster. The home crowd is loving it, and for La Rochelle, it gets worse because that leads to the second Dan Sheehan try. It's another kind of messy line-out, but a few phases, and Dan Sheehan is just kind of sneakily hanging out on that wing as the phases kind of look to be drifting left, and Gibson Park just picks him out with a really sweet ball back right, and Sheehan's able to go over for his second. So 17-0, man. They got an extra man on the field. It has just been the dream start for Leinster. It looks like all the kind of predictions, bookies, odds and whatnot have been, if anything, conservative. 17-0. Surely they're going to go on to kind of dominate this game. Well, maybe not. It's still very early days. Still a lot of rugby to be played. I mean, La Rochelle did have a maul after Leinster conceded a penalty at the breakdown. La Rochelle's got that massive pack. They want to try and make the best use of it, which makes absolute sense. But then eventually Leinster managed to win a turnover. Able to get themselves out of dodge, get themselves a nice exit? No. And it's going to be, I talk about moments that you're going to look back at. I think it was Gibson Park's pass to James Lowe with that big clearing boot of his is just too low. It's by his ankles. He can't take it. He knocks it on. What does that mean? It means 5-metre scrum time for La Rochelle. The scrum gets advantage. They go again. And then Dante is able to go over from that resulting scrum. He bumps off Gary Ringrose, which is not something we usually see. But he did it, and 17 points to 7. I think that one comes back. I mean, you can look back at it to the penalty at the breakdown that Leinster conceded. You can look back to the James Lowe knock-on, or the pass that led to that knock-on. But either way, Leinster had chances to get out of dodge there. didn't do it, and they paid for it, absolutely. So 17-7. Bottier gets pinged at the breakdown, but he will make up for that later on. Like, Leinster are able to slot kind of an easy 3 in reply. So the 7 they've just conceded doesn't look as bad, but it's 20 points to 7. But Bottier is certainly going to make himself a nuisance at the breakdown. Like that one, he got pinged for not releasing, but he wins a couple of turnovers later on. 29 minutes, Leinster put under big pressure. Well, they're putting big pressure on defence, really, because like one of the areas they struggled with, I felt like in last year's final, was the physicality, but they seem to be doing all right, at least in the first half. Like, Skelton was getting pushed backwards. I seem to remember James Ryan putting in like a massive hit. Then La Rochelle pinged at the breakdown, but then there's a bit of handbags. And I think crucially, and unfortunately for Leinster, James Ryan has to go off for an HIA. And I do feel like, I mean, Jenkins is a good player, but James Ryan's physicality, I think, was missing, and his leadership. I mean, as I said, you can look back at a lot of things as to where things went wrong for Leinster, but also a lot went right for La Rochelle. Like, they did a lot of amazing things as well. But, man, I think James Ryan was certainly missed. Leinster still managed to take a 3, so they extend the lead 23-7. Things are still looking pretty peachy for them, despite the fact that James Ryan goes off. But as I mentioned, Bottier is starting to make his presence felt at the breakdown. That's getting some steam up for the La Rochelle boys. And then La Rochelle scored an absolute peach of a try. Setoni is the man who finishes it, but they just went through some phases, very patient, and when he goes through, when they set him up, goes through absolutely untouched. Speaks to the work done by the forward pack and the build-up just to create that space. But 23-14 for La Rochelle, looking a lot healthier given the start that they conceded so many points. Second half, man, is just... Where was Leinster in the second half? La Rochelle, absolutely dominant. This was much more reminiscent of last year. I mean, last year, Leinster couldn't score a try. This year, they come out, bang, 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 tries in a big lead. But the second half just seemed to play in their shells. It was bizarre. And La Rochelle just absolutely took the game by the scruff of the neck. I mean, Dulon beaten Henshaw one-on-one, another guy who wouldn't usually miss a tackle like that. But, I mean, Furlong still managed to bag him. But then that leads to Setoni with a big old line break. Gibson, Park, and Keenan, between the two of them, just scramble enough to stop him from scoring. But Leinster still conceded a penalty. So it's 3 points closer for La Rochelle, 23-17. Leinster get 3 straight back with the scrum penalty. I think Ala Alatoa has come on pretty early, and he's able to force a penalty at scrum time. So 26-17. Kind of penalties cancel each other out. But then another kind of unforced error from Leinster. Gibson Park kicks it out on the full, and the ref, Yoko Paper, did say, I told you you'd carried it back, but maybe that's part of that kind of crowd noise where Gibson Park just didn't hear it. Either way, you've got to be aware. Take it back, so that gives La Rochelle a chance. Henshaw with a big tackle on defence. Good stuff, but then takes away from that good effort by conceding a really soft penalty at the breakdown. He just needed to kind of get out of there or, support his body weight, but he just got a bit overeager. So it's soft 3 points conceded, 26-20. Sheehan wins a massive turnover on Dante after Ross Byrne had been charged down, and Leinster's exit play. I don't mean to be negative, but man, like how many times did James Lowe shank it off the side of the boot? Gibson Park shanked it off the side of the boot once. Like Byrne got charged down. Just kind of simple stuff that I feel like they would normally get right. Maybe the pressure's getting to them. Don't know. But, I mean, you got to give credit to La Rochelle. Charging like Ross Byrne down, like commitment, just to keep playing and keep chasing that game. Massive defensive scrum from La Rochelle in 67 minutes. Breakdown penalty. And then La Rochelle are going for the jugular, man. No more penalties. They go for touch. They maul it. They get advantage. They go back to the maul. Their maul is brutal. They got some big bodies in that pack. They get held up. It's a yellow card warning for Leinster. Any more penalties at the maul time, and you're going to get somebody in the bin. What did La Rochelle do? Absolutely go for the maul again. It's another advantage. Phases. Colombe was able to go over. Burrows over from kind of very close range, as a proppers like to do. And Kelleher gets yellow carded. So not only have La Rochelle somehow, man, taken the lead 27-26, chased this game down, but now Leinster have got a man in the bin. So Leinster have not been at the races in the second half. It's been just kind of defensive shift after defensive shift plus a couple of penalties. It's not been that much to shout about. Maybe a bit too conservative. But yeah, La Rochelle are in front. Crowd is stunned. I'm stunned. There's the first TMO call in the match on 74 minutes when Dante puts on a high tackle on Caelan Doris. Commentators I had wanted it to be red, but it doesn't matter because it's in the last 10 minutes. So it is a yellow card for Dante. 14 on 14. Leinster finally get some field position. They haven't had bugger all in the second half. What can they do with it? Well, they go through some phases and eventually they knock it on. But they still got a chance, Leinster, because was it Dulon or Astor's clearance kick doesn't find touch. James Lowe's able to run it straight back at them. But man, the Leinster guys are tired. Like Alato at one point makes a carry. He's by himself. Like Gibson Park is only just able to kind of scramble the ball back to keep it in Leinster hands. Isolated carriers, it's not looking good. They have to stop eventually for an injury. It's to that man Colombe. And with all the kind of stoppages of like getting the guy off because he looks, he has to go off on a stretcher. It's pretty serious. They focus on a wee clean out from Alatoa. And he's gone in with a tucked arm and clattered him in the head. So it is red for Alatoa. So 13 men for Leinster. Penalty to La Rochelle. And that's pretty much the game, man. I mean, they're able to kick it back towards kind of halfway. Then Josh van der Vliet gives away a penalty at maul time. And La Rochelle are able to see it out with their 14 men on the pitch to Leinster's 13. So crazy finish to the game with a red card, a couple of yellows. Leinster had a chance to maybe get in the pocket and slide a droppy, but nah. No time to get it done. La Rochelle's defence holds. Possession and territory in this game finished 62-38 to La Rochelle and 57-43. In the second half especially, 67% possession, 61% territory. Just Leinster, man, were not given a chance. La Rochelle absolutely bossed the game. Leinster unable to kind of exit in their usual fashion. And La Rochelle just controlled the game. What can you say? Run meters 253 to 407. La Rochelle with that. Defenders beaten 22-7. La Rochelle. Tackles, Leinster make 169 to 89. La Rochelle are at 93%. Leinster 88. Like 88 is pretty good. 93 is better. So, yeah, man, I don't know what else to say. You can see why the Leinster guys were tired having made so many tackles. But, geez, it's unusual to see Leinster kind of just as passive as they were, kind of on the back foot. But sometimes, there's two teams. It's not like golf where you're on your own. There's another team at play, and sometimes you can only play what's in front of you. So credit to La Rochelle, man. Some big performers. Aldrich gets not only kind of player of the year for the European competition, but also man of the match in this one. 4 defenders beaten, 13 carries, 44 metres. Big shift from him. Botia wins a couple of turnovers. Titoni gets a couple of clean breaks. Some big performances from some of the big names in La Rochelle. I mean, Maloney, 20 tackles. Josh van der Vliet, 18 tackles. Sheehan, a couple of clean breaks, a couple of tries. But ultimately for them, the wait for that 5th star goes on. And for La Rochelle, back-to-back champions, man, that is a difficult thing to do. And it takes a bloody good team to get it done, especially away from home in Dublin. Unbelievable. Absolutely credit to those guys. Phenomenal shift. You guys let us know your thoughts. Where did it all go wrong for Leinster? Where did you see it turn around for La Rochelle, especially latter half of that first half and the second half? But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts, and congrats to La Rochelle. Talk to you guys again soon. See you later.